Consider what it would be like to walk into a room filled with strangers. Within seconds, you can see who's insecure, who's secretly ambitious, who's harboring resentment, and who's trying to dominate the room without speaking. Sounds impossible, right? But what if I told you Friedrich Nietzsche, the German philosopher known for his controversial argument that religion and morality are damaging to our individual and cultural health, was also one of the most perceptive psychologists in the history of the world? He wasn't just interested in abstract philosophy. He was obsessed with the forces that drive people, their need for power, their vulnerabilities, their masks. Nietzsche was so good at peeling away the mask of human behavior and exposing the motives that are kept hidden in shadows. In reality, much of his work is less philosophy, as though it were a psychological X-ray. He taught us that if you know where to look, envy, fear, resentment, desire, you can see people as they really are. And that's what the video is about. Today we're going to reveal 18 dark Nietzsche secrets that give you the power to read anyone instantly. These are not shallow body language tricks or tricks about eye contact. They are deeper, more powerful. We're about recognizing the invisible motivations that underlie what people say, do, and decide. By the end of this talk, you'll have a brand new lens through which to see human behavior. You'll see through masks. You'll spot hidden desires. You will decode people in a way that seems almost unfair. Just fair warning, once you pick up these insights, you cannot unsee them. Nietzsche's psychology is brutal and uncomfortable because it does not flatter our illusions. It strips them away. So if you're ready, then here we go with the first secret. Nietzsche is one of many who have observed that people lie far more than they tell the truth, not because they are evil or malicious, but because we all carry masks around with us. To be socially, we have to lie about who we are. Reflect for a moment on how we behave around other people. You may have one self for work, another for your friends, and another for your family. None of them is fake in a permanent, exactly useless sort of way. But they are all not quite you too. Nietzsche understood this fact very clearly. Any human being is an entity composed by masks. The problem, of course, is that many of us forget that other people have masks on as well. We take politeness as sincerity. We confuse charm for honesty. We assume the smile represents happiness, when it may signify tension, calculation, or even disdain. How can you read through the mask? Watch for cracks. It takes effort to keep masks in place, and people get tired, angry, distracted. That one colleague who feigns that they love everyone may accidentally let a snarky comment slip. That friend who seems assured might fidget like a schoolchild when questioned. Here's a good example. Imagine that you're on a job interview. The interviewer is welcoming, but while you respond, they look at their watch or tap a pen. The mask says, "I am polite and professional." The one crack says, "I am impatient, perhaps uninterested." Which one should you believe? Trust the crack, Nietzsche would call it. On social media, the mask is performativized. People curate the images of luxury, happiness, or success. Nietzsche would have chuckled at Instagram. It's the marketplace of masks. But even there, the cracks show. The vitriolic comments, the oversharing, the not-so-subtle bitterness in captions. Takeaway: people can cover their faces, but not indefinitely. If you want to read someone, train yourself in noticing the cracks. The truth always leaks out. Nietzsche loved strength, and I do mean strength as such. Not just physical strength, but strength in the sense of having some of it, some mojo, the thingness of life. Confidence, conviction, and independence. He thought we naturally drew to strength and repelled from weakness. Observe a bunch of strangers meeting for the first time. Who speaks with clarity? Who is in no hurry to lean forward, rest his chin in his open hands? Who fumbles and is jittery and keeps the dead air filled with conversation? Most likely, everyone sides with the assertive person and politely ignores the self-doubting one. This is not because strength is loud. Indeed, Nietzsche observed, true strength is frequently silent. The one who doesn't scramble to fill the silence often has the most power. Why? because they do not fear discomfort. Weakness, on the other hand, frequently manifests in the form of neediness. Consider the friend who plaintively inquires, "Do you think I did okay? Was that good? Do you like me?" That neediness for validation is a sign of weakness, and weakness to Nietzsche is so repelling because it is draining of others. It takes without giving. To know people, run their actions through this filter. Are they projecting independence or dependence? Independence signals strength. Dependence signals weakness. Consider relationships. With a partner who's always worrying about being left behind, clinging ensues and the other person eventually leaves. Strength attracts, weakness repels. Nietzsche said this not to be cruel, but because that's how human psychology works, beneath the surface. Takeaway: when you meet someone, observe how they hold themselves as an anchor, or whether they rely on you to be theirs. That one observation will speak volumes to you. Nietzsche thought that underneath every action is a will to power. It's the impulse to assert, to sway, to shape the reality beyond ourselves. In fact, even the tiniest gesture is hardly neutral. Consider a coworker who offers, "Oh, you know what you should do is this, I'm sure it'll be much easier for you." Sounds helpful, superficially that is, but if you take a closer look, you may realize that it's not merely about helping, it's about subtly directing you, exerting dominance or making themselves look competent. Nietzsche would say, don't get trapped at the surface. Ask, what is the will that lies behind these words? This applies to compliments too. A compliment can be sincere, but it can also be a means of softening you up for a request. It could be a power play wrapped in politeness. Pro tip: when you're spoken to, take a moment to mentally say, what do I know about the person speaking and her incentive to say this? It is not always a manipulative will. There may be affection, pride, insecurity involved, but there is always a concealed will. Politicians are, for example, experts at this. They don't talk at you just to tell you things. Each one follows language that is chosen to shape perception, to cultivate loyalty, or to establish opposition. Nietzsche would say that their speeches are not communication, but battles for power cloaked in rhetoric. Takeaway: when you want to read anyone, force yourself to wonder not only what are they saying, but why are they saying it? Words are smoke. The will is the fire. Envy, Nietzsche said, was a confession. When one envies, they confess what they really want, but cannot admit. Try the colleague who makes fun of the lucky guy who just got promoted. They say he didn't deserve it, but the truth is they wish they were him. Or the friend who is always putting people down for being show-offs on the internet. They frequently long to be as confident, or just as noticed. Nietzsche would say you should listen to critics, because envy is a spotlight and it shows you where you need to move. It gleams directly onto secrets and wishes hidden away. And it's not just people. Entire cultures expose themselves in envy. For instance, Nietzsche frequently attacked moral codes that exalted humility while denigrating wealth or power. Those values usually came from resentment, he argued, the weak envying the strong and dressing up their want as virtue. Practical tip: when someone repeatedly criticizes the same thing, money, beauty, success, status, ask yourself, do they secretly crave this for themselves? Here's an illustration. Imagine for a moment that there's someone who always makes fun of athletes, remarking, "Athletics are useless." Watch closely. Do they brighten a bit when they talk about people who go to the gym? Do they get exposed to athletes regardless? That's envy whispering the truth. Takeaway: envy is desire in drag. When you see that someone is envious, you're touching their absolute longings. Nietzsche distrusted excessive politeness. To him, it was frequently hostility and drag. You ever meet someone whose words are sweet, but whose words you can feel are sharp underneath? Or that friend who says, "Oh, what a neat idea," while smiling with their mouth but not their eyes? That's not kindness. That's contempt in velvet wrapping. Courtesy is one of the most common shields. It gives people an outlet to compete, to resent, or to make a display of themselves without coming to blows. This was, according to Nietzsche, common in civilized societies where direct hostility is not smiled upon. They don't fight, they poison each with etiquette. To read people, attend to the disjunction between their words and the tone they use. Real kindness is warm and easy. With fake politeness, something feels uncomfortable and forced, exaggerated, or just a bit wrong. Think about customer service interactions. Sometimes the politeness is genuine. Sometimes it's just mechanical, a mask you put on because the job requires it. According to Nietzsche, the second type is not kindness at all, but concealed resentment. Takeaway: courtesy does not always mean well-wishing. See through the sugar to the poison. Humor, Nietzsche argued, is never neutral. What people are made fun of for shows you what they fear, envy, or secretly long for. Why is it that one person makes endless jokes about the rich being greedy, and another is always mocking egghead intellectuals as nerds? The comedy is not random, and it's a clue. It is Nietzsche who says, "Show me the people who laugh, and I shall know all." For instance, think of two colleagues. You'd love to crack a few sarcastic jokes about jocks. Another makes a joke about lonely single people. Underneath the comedy, the first one likely has a health or discipline problem. The second, likely insecure about relationships. Comedy can conceal pain, envy, or hostility, but it can't hide direction. Jokes are arrows. They always point in the direction of the secret wound. Takeaway: if you'd like to read someone, you do not laugh with them alone. Ask yourself, why that target? That's where the truth lies. Nietzsche knew repression before Freud made it famous. He realized, by contrast, that when people buried emotions, anger, lust, envy, ambition, the feelings did not go away. They resurface in twisted ways. A smaller irritation may set off positive anger. Whenever someone refuses to admit to feelings of envy, or is in denial of those feelings, that person may become somewhat moralistic, condemning others for being selfish or arrogant people. A person who suppresses desire may become fixated on purity or control. Nietzsche would say, watch the overreactions. The anger just doesn't fit the situation, so it's not about reacting to the moment. It's about leaking something old and buried. Example: imagine a man who yells at a waiter for screwing up his order a little. The rage is not about food. It's the frustration that he stows away somewhere else. In his job, his marriage, his own mediocrity. The restaurant is the stage. There's some powerful Nietzsche insight here. People can conceal thoughts, but they cannot conceal the tension that the thoughts generate. The stress always leaks out, in tone, in overreaction, in weird obsessions. Bestial: if you want to see behind the curtain, the real situation, watch the power of leaks. Takeaway: if you want to see the real person, watch for the leaks. What they cover up the most effort will shout oaths. Nietzsche was fond of saying that silence is not weakness, it's power. He who truly reigns over himself never needs to justify himself, explain himself, or chat. Ever sense how insecure people are over-explainers? They have got to cut into that silence because silence feels menacing. Meanwhile, the genuinely secure person can sit back, watch, and wait. Just being there speaks for them. Think of two leaders in a room. One insists on reassuring everyone, gabbing on and on about plans and goals. The other is silent except for once, and then briefly, and then with deliberation. Who has the real authority? Nietzsche would call the mute. Silence riles people because it makes a void. The vast majority rush to fill that void with words, and in the process, they reveal themselves. The silent person, though, never shows you a damn thing unless they want to. That's power. Indeed, Nietzsche himself was a great writer of aphorism, brief, pithy shards of thought. He knew that what goes unsaid can often have more power than what is said. Takeaway: when you read people, Pay attention to how they use silence. Is it fear or is it strength? The variation will describe just how much control they really have over themselves. One of Nietzsche's most radical ideas is that morality develops from resentment. People who feel powerless, he contended, make up moral rules to rein in the powerful. Consider someone who loses in business and then says, "Money doesn't matter, wealth is corrupt." Or the spurned lover who blusters, "I never liked romance on principle." Nietzsche called this resentment a sort of moral revenge. Here's how to apply this insight. When people moralize excessively, when they're always yelling, "This is wrong, that's evil, this is bad," question what wound this morality is covering. For example, a person who criticizes arrogance may desire affirmation in private. One who takes it upon themselves to attack pleasure might be envious of those who are free. Morality, Nietzsche would say, is the confession of moral inferiority disguised as moral superiority. This is not to say that all morality is false, but if you really want to read people, I'd keep my eye on the emotional tenor behind the judgments. Is it calm and principled, or is it bitter and resentful? If it's the latter, then you've just seen their secret scar. Takeaway: it's not what people confess, but the moral rules that they impose on others that convey vulnerability. Nietzsche was not one for helpful advice. He observed that advice is seldom offered to benefit you, but to benefit those providing the advice. Think about it. Parents frequently advise children to pursue safe careers. Is that purely wisdom? Or might it be their own fear of risk transferred to the child? A friend warns you not to date someone too ambitious. Is that concern, or envy disguised as caution? As Nietzsche said, when someone is offering advice, you must ask yourself, what desire is being fulfilled here? Neo-doomed again 1D. A colleague asking you to stay humble could just not accept you being better than themselves. A coworker advising you to stay humble might secretly want you to be staying beneath them. A friend that tells you, "Don't waste your time on that project," may be conflicted by seeing you succeed. Even when the advice looks kind, it's worth questioning. Nietzsche wasn't cynical. He was just alive to the fact that any recommendation comes loaded with an agenda. It has always borne the hidden desires, fears, or projections of the giver. Takeaway: if you want to read somebody, don't just listen to what's being said. Hear the desire behind it. Nietzsche had keen eyes for vanity. When people talk so much about themselves, they're not revealing strength, he said. They're revealing weakness. Bragg's people brag because people are insecure. All boasting is a form of compensation for an insecurity. Consider the guy who is always bragging about how much money he's earned, the many people he knows, and all 24 of his accomplishments. If they were really secure, why this need to announce the good news? Nietzsche would be like, they swagger because they're worried you won't appreciate them if they don't. Boasting is like a bandage. The more a boast sounds, the more is the wound beneath. For instance, the man who constantly brags about the women with whom he has slept may actually be afraid that he is incapable of being loved. And the student who loves to show off their grades to everyone might actually be insecure that they're not smart enough. This is a principle you can apply immediately to when meeting people. From the Journal of Banking Finance. The wealth downplaying effect may serve as a signal of wealth for individuals to show that they are confident about their wealth position. Underneath, when someone can't stop talking about it, there's insecurity. Nietzsche's intuition is brutal but helpful. Boasting is not a mark of mastery, but of fragility. The underlying insecurities that motivate the bragging will reveal themselves. The response will tell you who they are in truth. Nietzsche had already reminded us that people can't get out of their habits. A pattern of behavior is where you see who a person really is. Not their words, not their now and again actions, but who they really are. Instead, someone who's always late is not just inconsiderate of the time once, but how valuable or not valuable other people are. Someone who is frequently spreading gossip isn't just talkative. They are communicating to you envy, or insecurity. Nietzsche would put it this way: a soul is a rhythm, a repetition of habits, a type of play. This will in practice look like the following. How do they treat the people who can't do anything for them? Waiters, assistants, strangers, that's their real self. See how someone spends their time when they're not being made to. Do they read, waste time, learn, numb out? That's who they are becoming. A one-time act can mislead. A repeated habit never lies. Takeaway: if you have an instant read of anyone, don't rely on grand pronouncements. Track their patterns. The biography of soul is action. Nietzsche loved contradictions because they reveal what people try to hide. When someone says one thing but lives another, the truth is always in the contradiction. For example, a person who constantly preaches about honesty but often tells small lies is not honest. They are obsessed with honesty because they lack it. A leader who insists they are humble while demanding attention is revealing arrogance beneath the surface. Nietzsche would call this the psychology of opposites. People often overcompensate by preaching the value they lack most. You can test this quickly. The person who loudly condemns greed, likely tempted by it. The one who insists they don't care what people think, they care the most. The preacher of purity who obsesses over sin, probably fighting inner desires. Contradictions are cracks in the mask. They show you not just who the person pretends to be, but who they really are when no one is watching. Takeaway: whenever someone's words and actions don't align, trust the actions. The contradiction is the truth trying to escape. Nietzsche was fascinated by ambition. He believed that people rarely admit how much they crave power, success, or recognition. But you can see ambition in the smallest gestures. For example, in meetings, watch who positions themselves closest to authority figures. At social gatherings, notice who subtly steers conversations back to their achievements. These details are not accidents, they're signals of ambition. Ambition also leaks in tone. Someone might pretend to be just helping, but their eagerness to control outcomes reveals their deeper hunger. Nietzsche himself saw ambition everywhere, in religion, in politics, in philosophy. He argued that even those who claimed to renounce ambition, like monks or ascetics, were often seeking a subtler form of it: moral superiority. This is the Nietzschean twist. Even the denial of ambition is a form of ambition. Saying, "I don't care about power," is often the ultimate power move, because it makes others drop their guard. Takeaway: if you want to read people, don't just listen to their declarations. Watch the little moves. Ambition is rarely confessed, but always displayed. Nietzsche believed conflict is the ultimate X-ray of the soul. In peace, people wear masks. In conflict, those masks shatter. Think about it. A person can seem calm, friendly, and collected until they're challenged. Suddenly, the real personality bursts out. Do they grow defensive? Do they lash out? Do they stay composed? Do they retreat into silence? Nietzsche would argue that how someone fights tells you more than how they live, because in struggle, the instincts rise to the surface. Examples: the friend who seems generous but turns vicious when you disagree is revealing their hunger for control. The colleague who stays calm even under attack reveals inner strength. The partner who withdraws into cold silence instead of arguing reveals avoidance, not peace. Nietzsche himself thrived on conflict, intellectual battles, critiques of morality, challenges to tradition. For him, struggle was not just natural, it was clarifying. It showed people's essence. Takeaway: if you want to know someone deeply, don't just watch them in comfort. Watch them in conflict. That's where their real character lives. Nietzsche believed admiration is a confession. When people idolize someone else, they're revealing the qualities they most desire, but don't see in themselves. A person who worships artists may long for creativity. Someone who idolizes athletes may crave discipline or strength. A person obsessed with billionaires probably feels powerless and dreams of freedom. This principle is simple but powerful. Tell me who someone admires, and I'll tell you what they secretly wish to become. Nietzsche saw this at a cultural level too. Societies glorify the values they lack. For example, a culture obsessed with youth may be terrified of aging. A culture obsessed with wealth may feel deep scarcity. You can test this instantly. Ask someone their role models. Listen closely. What they praise is what they crave. Takeaway. People rarely admit their weaknesses, but their heroes admit it for them. Admiration is desire in disguise. For Nietzsche, suffering was not just unavoidable, it was the forge of the human soul. He believed that how people respond to pain reveals their deepest truth. Some collapse under suffering, becoming bitter, resentful, or broken. Others use suffering as fuel, transforming pain into strength, art, or wisdom. Watch carefully. The person who complains endlessly about small discomforts will likely crumble in real crisis. The person who endures hardship silently may be carrying reserves of strength invisible to others. The person who turns tragedy into creativity, writing, building, leading, has mastered Nietzsche's idea of amor fati, the love of fate. Nietzsche himself suffered constantly, illness, isolation, rejection. Yet he turned that pain into some of the most powerful philosophy ever written. His life was proof of his own insight. Suffering doesn't just reveal the soul, it builds it. Takeaway. If you want to know someone's depth, don't look at their pleasures. Look at their suffering. That's where the truth lives. At the heart of Nietzsche's psychology is his most famous idea, the will to power. He believed that every human being, beneath all disguises, is striving to expand, influence, dominate, or create. Not always in political or violent ways, sometimes through art, teaching, parenting, or achievement. But always, there is a struggle for power. When you watch people through this lens, everything becomes clearer. The child showing off drawings is expressing will to power. The teacher shaping minds is expressing will to power. Even the person who says, "I don't care about power," is often expressing the will to moral power, trying to look above the struggle. Nietzsche would say, no action is free of this drive. Whether subtle or obvious, everyone is reaching for more life, more influence, more control. This is the final key to reading people. Beneath masks, words, envy, politeness, ambition, or suffering, it all comes down to power. Who wants it, who denies it, and who already has it. Takeaway. If you strip away the surface, every human being is a battlefield of power. That's Nietzsche's ultimate truth. So let's step back. What have we uncovered? Nietzsche gave us 18 psychological truths, each one a lens to read people instantly. Masks always crack. Strength attracts. Weakness repels. Words are smoke. Look for the will behind them. Envy, politeness, humor, contradictions, they're all signals. Habits, suffering, and heroes reveal the hidden self. And behind it all is the will to power, the driving force of human life. With these lenses, you can walk into any room and see more than others do. You can pierce through masks, spot hidden desires, and understand people at their core. But here's the paradox Nietzsche would warn us about. The more you see others clearly, the more you must turn that same gaze on yourself. Because these secrets don't just expose other people, they expose you. Your envy, your contradictions, your hidden wounds, your ambitions. Nietzsche's challenge is not just to read people, but to confront yourself without illusions, to live without masks, to embrace your own will to power openly instead of disguising it. That's the real power of his psychology. Not just to decode others, but to master yourself. So the next time you meet someone new, remember Nietzsche's 18 truths. Look past the smile, the words, the surface. Look at the cracks, the contradictions, the patterns. You'll see more than they want you to see. And once you learn to read people this way, you'll never see the world the same again.